Welcome, everyone, to another webinar with Lifestyle Beautiful. I am Megan Ward. I am the founder and CEO of Lifestyle Beautiful, and I'm so pleased to have with us today Jim McLeod. He's going to take us through a special webinar, Mind Over Chatter. All of us have all these mind and chatter moments where there's lots of things going on that can give us thoughts that are not well for us. So without further ado, I want to actually introduce Jim. He has got a wonderful and impressive background. He is our health expert here. So Jim has a master's degree in counseling and he's an accredited life coach. He's got decades of experience in public and motivational speaking, and he really focuses on helping individuals move forward in their life, especially overcoming barriers. And that's what tonight is going to be really focused on today. I started Lifestyle Beautiful because I really couldn't find a full suite option for health and well-being for people, including all aspects of our lives. And so, especially in the workplace, I have about 20 years of HR experience, and I found that a lot of people going through struggles at work really weren't focused on their holistic well-being. And there's not a lot of companies that really help their employees with their holistic well-being. And so that's why I started Lifestyle Beautiful, to really create that full-fledged well-being suite of offerings. So Jim, why don't you go ahead and take it from there and tell us, please, anything else you'd like to add about yourself as well.
Okay, thank you, Megan. Very excited to share this. I was sharing just a little bit ago that the stories that I'm telling and these concepts that I'm going to present are things that through different times in my life and stories just completely accidentally dropped into my lap. So I will start with a very interesting story. It happened about 25 years ago. I sat down with my three siblings and I said, we all need to have a talk with dad. We need to make things right with him. And, life is short. After a 2-hour restaurant conversation, no one agreed with me. So for the next 3 months, I started to summons up the courage and begin the plan to develop a conversation with my dad that I've been afraid to have my whole life. So I finally wrote it all out. I contacted my dad and we set up this phone call, which is what I could do. For about 4 hours that afternoon, my dad and I talked. I heard stories about my dad's life. I learned more about my dad in that 4-hour conversation than I had ever known before. A little backstory is that one of the main thing that I wanted to confront my dad about was, Dad, why did you always say to me and my siblings that we're good for nothing? Why did you say that? Now, I didn't end up confronting him. I ended up asking him about his parents, his siblings, his teachers, his aunts, his uncles, his grandparents. And I started to hear story after story after story after story. And it was very emotional because I realized that my dad had been told hundreds and hundreds of times that he himself, that he was good for nothing, that he wasn't good enough, that he was a loser, and on and on and on. And then he ran away from home when he was in 8th grade, at the end of 8th grade, because his teacher it was the first time a teacher had really, really told him that he was good for nothing and he wasn't smart and he wasn't good enough. And that was it. My father ran away and he lived on his own, if you can believe it, after the 8th grade, lived in a car, got a job, got a place of his own. Just an absolutely, for me, mind-boggling life story. All I wanted initially were some answers. Dad, why did you tell us we were good for nothing? It blossomed into this incredible life story. At the end of that conversation, I kept telling my father, thank you for telling me this. I said to him, Dad, we've talked hundreds, thousands of times as an adult, and neither one of us have ever said, I love you. to each other. And I said, from now on, at the end of this call, I would like to start doing that. What do you think? And he said, okay. And he did. I can't explain how relieved I was, how shocked I was that this conversation that I thought it would never happen, that seemed impossible, turned into the most relieving, freeing conversation I could have ever imagined. And it started something with my dad, not a great relationship, but a relationship all the way up to the end of his life where we started having real talks, no stress, no tension, and just free conversations about his life. I wanted to share, as a segue, I wanted to share something that I share quite frequently with my clients, and that would be what I call power quotes. So on the screen, you'll see two different power quotes, and let's start with these first two. I'll be sharing them on and off throughout the presentation tonight. The first one is, when you realize others treat you as they see themselves, their words and their actions become clearer. That's exactly what happened with my dad and I. He was literally thinking in his head all the memories of his life, realizing that he wasn't good enough and that he was this and he wasn't that. And he just projected it onto me. He projected it on to my siblings. It was awful, but you know what? His actions became clearer. The second quote on the screen there is, if you talk about it, it's a dream. If you envision it, it's possible. But if you schedule it, it's real. The reason on that quote I threw out right there, it took me 3 months to plan out this conversation with my dad. And I did talk about it a lot to my friends, to my wife, to my daughters. And I even could imagine the conversation. But until I called my dad and said, can we have this talk on Saturday afternoon? I don't think it would have ever happened. I want to say at that moment that, as having so many clients in my career and living life myself, one of our greatest enemies is this idea that maybe someday, I'll have this talk, or maybe someday I'll finally do this, or I'll finally stop doing that. As a coach, as a therapist, that is probably one of the worst things we can say, because honestly, we're expressing how important it is. For me, it was so important that I have this talk with my dad, that I cleared the air, that I could finally understand some things that I thought were impossible to understand. And I even had friends tell me, don't do it. It's not worth it. It's going to backfire. But when I made a deadline, when I laid it out, it worked. Now I want to go into some more power quotes. There's like a few on another page. First one is one that I have really been plugging in this year, and that is, incredible change happens in your life when you decide to take control of what you have power over, one, instead of craving control over what you don't. I have noticed in my own life, in my clients' lives, that craving control over what I can't control tends to be what consumes us. We're talking about mind over chatter. A lot of our chatter is in our heads is, I just wish this would happen. I wish they would finally own it and step up and do this and say that. And it never happens. I lately have been plugging this in because I realize myself that I get really worried and stressed when I can't control something. So what I've been doing is I've been making little action lists for myself. What can I control? As a health coach, life coach, wellness coach, what can I control? I can control daily exercise. I can control taking care of my body first, eating well. And then, when I take care of myself, I journal, I take care of my mind, I start to feel better. And it's interesting, if you do number one, incredible change happens when you decide to take control of what you have power over. That craving control component seems to shrink. it seems to slowly but surely go away. It comes back, sure, once in a while, but it starts to go away because I'm controlling what I can instead of wanting to control what I can't. It's just so simple, but it is so powerful. It's so obvious, but in real life, everyday stress, it's not so obvious. We need to be reminded of that. The next quote: every day, you must unlearn the ways that hold you back. Rid yourself of negativity so you can learn to fly. I love that, Leon Brown. The next one: no matter where you go or what you do, you live your entire life within the confines of your head. That is oh so true. And the last one, the last power quote is: everything is plainer when spoken than unspoken. I have had hundreds of clients that are craving control over what they can with another person, with a relationship, or somebody at work. And until they can have the talk, what I did with my dad, things became plainer when I let my dad speak, when I was willing to listen and shut down all the things I wanted to say to him. Unbelievable, unbelievable how much plainer that was. Socrates said that. I mean, that was a long time ago. That was a long time ago. So these power quotes tie in perfectly with that initial story between my dad and I. I'd like to look a little more specifically at what are chatters matters. What is this thing, mind over chatter? And it starts off with expectations, right? I'm just saying this tritely, but you know what? Every day I have to think about this. What are people's expectations of me? You know, what are my own expectations of myself? What are my expectations of everybody around me? And you know what? Those three things drive me crazy day in and day out because I think that it's very easy to fall into a trap of we say, what we call unrealistic expectations. You know, a lot of times I say to myself, am I expecting more from others or am I expecting more from myself? Because if I can kind of weigh out that balance, I can realize, you know, I can control my expectations of myself. I cannot control my expectations of others. Now, there's some more chatters matters beyond the expectation aspect. You know, as a therapist, I realized people were dealing with this all the time: guilt, anger, frustration, anxiety. You know, if you hang on to these emotions, they can become something much greater than just those emotions. For instance, anxiety can be a disorder, and there's a whole list of different kinds of anxiety disorders. People that live with guilt, I've had clients who have told me every single day for the last 10 years, 20 years, they've had guilt every single day of their lives. They don't talk about it to anybody. They don't share it. They are gripped with guilt, anger, frustration, anxiety that come directly, think about this, from unmet expectations. We just talked about those expectations. We have them of others. I don't care how many times I tell myself, lower your expectations of this person and that person. I fall into that trap. And then I become angry or I become frustrated. I have anxiety. The next one is kind of an obvious, but maybe not so obvious. The endless stress about life's littles until they eventually become life's bigs. Isn't it interesting that for a while I was a marriage counselor, that one person in the relationship would say, why are we sweating the small things? The other person would always say, they're not small. No one can agree on what's small and what's little. But often we would come to the point where we would realize, well, it used to be small and now it's big. And I think it's because we hold on. We hold on to little things. And the longer we hold on to them, they grow right in our hands and they become bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's part of chatters matters as well. The next one is, and this was me, when I talked to my dad that day on the phone for hours, I lived with confusion about my childhood. My siblings told me they lived with anger and bitterness, and they couldn't forgive my father. And I understood it because I'm a human being too. But how do you pull yourself out of that prison of being bitter towards somebody your whole life? Um, so constant confusion about all these nonsensical whys in life. Why would somebody say that to me? Why would somebody do that? Who treats somebody like that? And I can talk to somebody in less than 5 minutes. We're sharing story after story after story after story of how people are not treating them right, not talking to them right, and or how that was part of their childhood, or how it's part of their first marriage, or on and on and on. What a jerk! What a terrible person. Um, Triggered memories of humiliation is the next one. Uh, that's a big deal. I mean, I think so many times in life, for a time, I was bullied as a kid. And I know that was very humiliating. And of course, no one likes to be humiliated. So I still have occasionally a triggered memory of humiliation. That's kind of just part of being a human being and have lived on this planet for a while. Is somebody said something really mean or awful to you or humiliated you in front of somebody else. Working with teenagers for years as I did, and with social media, the way kids are humiliated now is not the way they were when I was growing up. Either way, it's terrible. It's awful, and sometimes impossible to get that chatter out of your head. The next one is kind of a weird one, maybe when you first read it, but all the obvious gaps in appreciation. Sometimes I would go up to someone that I was working with, and I would say, "I've noticed this, and I want to tell you, I'm very impressed with how you handled this situation. I'm very proud of you for how you did," and on and on and on. I have had so many people tell me, my peers tell me, that they hadn't had a compliment, they hadn't been appreciated like that in years. That's absolutely crazy. And yet it isn't, because that's real life, according to what some people say. So all these obvious gaps in appreciation, I do all this stuff and I help all these people, and do they ever say thanks? I've had a blessed life, and so many people have told me thank you and appreciated what I've done. So I guess I don't get it in some ways, but I have been in situations where no one ever complimented me. And I realized, you know what? These gaps in appreciation, it's not me. It's the person that's not able to express it. There's something about their life story, most likely, that no one ever expressed appreciation to them. And then the last one is believing and accepting all the inaccurate labels placed on you throughout your life. I just thought of this story. I used to teach marriage classes to married couples that were in a pretty good place, but still struggling. We were talking about labels. And one night I came in, and my wife gave me all these stickers, and I made stickers. I spent a whole week thinking about it, but I had made over 70 stickers that I put all over my shirt, front and back, of labels that people had given me in my life. Now, I never added it up. I never thought about it. 70 labels that people had given me in my life. There's one thing to have a label put on you. There's another thing to say, you're right, I'm just that. And that's going on in your head too. The chatters matters are long-term chronic, life things, or they're a recent conversation or a recent relationship combat. They're all of it. Chatter is what I'm trying to say to you is grand in all of it. Before I finish and we stay on this slide, believing and accepting the inaccurate labels, I wanted to share a few quotes that go along with chatters matters. This one's an anonymous quote that someone shared with me about 15 years ago. We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. And so we need people in our lives. Talk about coaching, right? We need that second set of eyes, that third set of eyes to say, you know what? This is what's really going on. There's this chatter in your head, but this is really what's going on. This ought to make you feel better. Now we can deal with that, not, what you think is actually going on. Losing an illusion, Ludwig Born said, losing an illusion is more powerful than finding a truth. A lot of this chatter over time, over the years, becomes variations of things that aren't exactly accurate or true. And losing an illusion, I've realized in my life, makes you wiser than finding a truth. The last one is this is Albert Einstein, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. I love that quote. I want to share another story that really, it changed my life in so many ways, and it's strange, but it brought me through a whole life change to the point where I'm right here, right now, excited about being a coach for Lifestyle Beautiful. The story happened when I was 24 years old. As I came out of college for about 3 years after that, graduated when I was 21. My brother had a construction business, and it just happened. I had a business degree, but I ended up going into business with him, and it was a very high risk construction job. And in the middle of January in the state of Minnesota, the ground is frozen. It's 20 below wind chill. We go out to a new construction site. And that morning, like so many other mornings, we did a lot of the same things we always do. And I went up in a commercial forklift up on a roof, getting ready to step on the roof, 35 feet in the air. And that I don't remember anything after that, because after that, I was thrown out 35 feet, landed on the ground head first. And this is what I was told. When the emergency personnel came, I wasn't there. I wasn't breathing. I wasn't alive. And eventually they were able to get me back. We've all heard of near-death experiences. I had one, but I have no memory of it, which is very strange. I came back, and yet I was unconscious for quite a while. And finally, I came to in the hospital and started to try to remember, and I couldn't remember anything that happened that day. And went through about a year of having my body and my mind, my brain put back together. Here I was, 24 years old, had my whole life planned out. And I was already very successful in the construction field, getting ready to build our dream house, everything planned out. I was, in my head, unstoppable, invincible. I didn't really care about people. I just wanted to get to the top as fast as I could. But strangely enough, this was a workers' comp situation, of course. Strangely enough, it drug on for years. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I went through all these batteries of tests, and I was told this is what I should do, and that's what I should do. And I'm like, I need to have a talk with my doctor. And I remember sitting down with an orthopedic surgeon who had done a surgery on me. He has a talk with me, and he says, "You're never going back." Because I thought, I'm just going to beat this. I'm going to get back. You'll never be able to go back to construction. You have to accept this and let everybody guide you towards your future. Anyways, it was 3.5 years later, long story short, that I was awarded a master's degree. I already had my bachelor's degree. I was awarded a master's degree to be paid for a workers' comp insurance company in the state of Minnesota. I have to stop for a second because this is what's crazy. I found this out last year when one of the lawyers that worked with my lawyer told me that because my case was the first in the history of Minnesota workers' compensation law, many people, as in hundreds, and he actually named a couple of famous people, are able to get their master's and their PhD degrees paid by workers' comp companies, which he said never would have happened unless they had a precedent. He goes, your case was a precedent. And it just blew my mind. I just realized, life is way bigger than we think it is. And after that accident, and after these years of thinking what I wanted to do, I realized that the whole experience changed my mind. It changed my life. It changed my passions and my mission. And I wanted to do nothing else but help people. And I didn't know how to do that, of course, at first. So then I went to school got my master's degree, moved 1,200 miles away, and then really started to use it and started to help people. And here I am all these years later, realizing that I never would even be here tonight telling this story, talking about what I'm passionate about, what I love, what makes life worth living, if it wasn't for that terrible accident. That honestly, I was told my brain was irreversibly damaged, and I was able to get 2 master's degrees after I was told that. And all these things I was told would happen to my body and my mind have not happened. And you know what? I think a huge part of that is taking control of my life through healthy choices, which is pretty cool because that's what Lifestyle Beautiful is all about. So that's a crazy story. It changed my life. Um, I actually can't really fathom or comprehend, even to this day, that I was dead and I should have, you know, I don't even know. I had no children. We just got married. I can't believe it when I think about it. But every year on the anniversary, I go back and I read a stack of papers. I look at pictures of me laying there on the ground after the accident. It's pretty scary, but realizing that, wow, I got like this huge second chance in life. And so I value things like this: name it, claim it, game it. Now let's look at these concepts: name it, claim it, game it. Let's take these 2 stories that I just gave and put them together and name it, claim it, game it. When I decided with my dad to name it, you might say to yourself, what is it? You know, what is it? Well, it's for me is there's a barrier and then there's a goal. And so I looked at the impossibleness of getting my dad to say all this stuff, but I also looked at this goal and said, what if he says all this stuff and clears it up? So naming it is with specificity, very, specific. You write it all out. And this is what I've done many times in my life. Here's the barrier. Here's the goal. The second one is huge, claiming it. The one thing I've seen in relationships, okay, with people coaching and doing therapy, is that it's very rare for a person to own something that they've done or that they've not done. In the case of my dad, I wasn't owning that it was okay to psychologically abuse me, but I was owning that I was going to go to my grave, and so was he, without us ever having this conversation. So what if I was owning it? I need to have this talk with my dad. I don't care what anybody else says. I don't care that my siblings don't want to do it. It totally changed my life. And I'm so thankful that I did it. But I had to own something first. Now, this is really important. The first, naming it, is writing it out. The second, claiming it, is owning it. I'll say it out loud to myself. Many times I practice this. When I'm driving alone and I'm really struggling, I talk out loud. I say out loud to myself in the car. People think I'm crazy. I got to work this through. I've got to do this. I got to, I got to own this. This is me. I got to make a change here. I need to. I have to, or else. And then I not only own it by myself, but I own it with a friend. And then later on, I'll own it with others. I think it's so important, and it shows how serious that you're going to be. If you're going to do something in life to get rid of this chatter, to get rid of this stuff that honestly, I remember a client I had, and we were working on him getting things right with his dad. And he was going to see his father. And on his way there, his dad died. And he had this whole thing written out. He had done the same thing, all planned out, ready to have this talk. And his dad died. And I remember how crushed he was. But he had waited for years and put it off and put it off. But he finally owned what I owned. And that was, I got to have this talk. And I remember that we came to a conclusion that he would read the letter out to his wife, to his friends, to some family members, his siblings, and they would go to the graveside, they would read it out, and then they would put the letter right there with the flowers on his dad's grave. It was so powerful. And honestly, it made a huge difference in his life. So he owned it, not only with himself, and even though it was too late, it wasn't too late. How powerful is that? But then probably even more important than anything else is gaming it. Name it. What's the barrier? What's the goal? Write it all out. Game it. Claim it. Own it out loud with yourself, with others. Game it. make a deadlines project. Now, here's the thing. If I wouldn't have scheduled this talk, I would have kept saying to my siblings, well, someday I'll have this talk. Well, someday this, or maybe then, or, if this happens, then maybe it'd be a better time. This whole idea of someday is probably the worst thing we can do to ourselves, almost trapping our minds with this chatter like a life sentence. So the someday goes away when you set a date. I was asked many times in my past with clients, why is it that people make a New Year's resolution, January 1st, somewhere around there, and by February, whatever, 18, 3 out of 4 people give up on their resolution. And I think it's a misunderstanding of the word determination. When it comes to making a deadline project, you have to do something before you do something. And that is this. The word determination means to stop stopping or to quit quitting. That just blew my mind so many times in life when I was afraid to make a big decision. And then I can start starting. So making a deadline and saying, this is when I'm going to finish this. This is when I'm going to do this, and have it completely personalized. You have to stop stopping before you start starting. You know what happened? What happened with the talk with my dad was this, is that I took steps towards something I never had with my father, and that's towards understanding and clarity. But simultaneously, I was taking steps away from this confusion that I've lived with, that my siblings still have. My dad's gone, and I mean, I try to tell him the story. It's sad. But you know what? Having done that with so many people, having done that the day after my dad died was so powerful. He told me how he never made things right with his siblings, and I got to be the speaker at his funeral and talked right to them. It was so powerful, but he was so crushed that he couldn't make things right with people. And he kept telling me, Jim, you got to forgive people. You got to talk to them. You got to make things right. And the day after he died, I laid a plan out. I wrote out, who am I going to call? Who am I going to write? Who am I going to write and never send it? I made this huge list, and I made things right with 10 people the day after my dad passed away. So using this is just so freeing and so wonderful. I have to close this idea of name it, claim it, game it with this quote. To look is one thing. To see what you look at is another. To understand what you see is a third. To learn from what you understand is still something else. This is where things change. But to act on what you learn is all that really matters. It's all that really matters. I could share a lot more, but I just want, for anyone listening, for anyone watching this, I want you to realize that anybody can do this. It dropped in my lap. I felt like I could or couldn't do it the first time, but anybody can do this. It's probably the only way to get that chatter out of your head, and to free up the possibility of having relationships that never seemed possible. So yeah, I guess that's probably where I will finish. I don't know if there's any questions. Megan.
Hi, yeah, absolutely. This was great and insightful. And I have just a couple of comments before we take some questions. So I
Sure.
remember you had mentioned that you really focused on taking control of your life. And that is exactly what Lifestyle Beautiful is about.
Yep.
And I wish more people in the world would realize that. And it's just, there's some that just don't even have the access to this information. So that's why your words tonight were so important, Jim. So thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about the second chance in life, and just really share a little bit more. I'd love to hear. I mean, I have not myself had a near-death experience, and I'm always fascinated for those who have.
Yes.
When you mentioned the word, second chance in life, can you tell us more about what you mean by that?
For me, I don't mean to be preachy about it or to say it's like some crazy spiritual thing. It was just, I think that I never it's such a great question. I never realized who I really was until after the accident, but I had to focus on my strengths. I had to focus on my gifts. I had to focus on my talents. I had to focus on things I really cared about. And so that second chance wasn't just coming back from the dead. It was saying, hey, you know what? If I'm going to live this life, I want to live it to the fullest. And I got a second chance to do what I love, which is to help people. I think it was always there. I just think a lot of things got in the way.
Wow. Yes, that's really helpful to understand. And that is never really realizing who you are in life. That can really make us all feel like, hey, are we missing out? Is there
Yep.
something that we should reset? Um, Great. Thank you so much. And Julie, I wanted to turn it over to our COO. I think she's on the line, and I wanted her to share a little bit more about her and Lifestyle Beautiful. And then if we have any other questions, we can go from there.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Megan and Jim. Just have to tell you, you are such an inspirational individual. I so appreciate you. Thank you for sharing your story, your personal journey, and also for giving us some very tangible tools to really reset our mindset. Our mindset is one of the most important things that can help us throughout our life, because I believe that challenges are just opportunities. Failures are about learning. You know, I like the acronym FAIL is the first installment in learning, or first act in learning. And I'd like everybody to really think about this. Now, here's some tangible things. If you are here joining us, you will also get this replay that will be sent directly to your inbox because you signed up for Lifestyle Beautiful. And we're so appreciative because we are excited to bring to you world-class experts that have incredible knowledge to share. And again, these health coaches, your personal coach that you can leverage from Lifestyle Beautiful, can walk you through not only in creating a new reality and mindset, but being able to understand how to use this every day in your life, not just attending a seminar, a webinar, a one-time all, but really going by your side and walking and holding you accountable, but also allowing you to leverage all of these things that we have here. So the best thing to do is make sure that you sign up. I'm going to share our newsletter, and I would invite you to please sign for any upcoming webinars, and you will keep abreast. We do not sell your information, but we want to just partner with you and be your friend in helping you create your Lifestyle Beautiful. I'm so thrilled and excited and honored to be a part of this company. I have been, again, a part of different organizations, but I am so passionate about the work that we do, because no matter whether we're trying to be healthy or live a more fulfilled life, we can't do it alone. You know, there's an African proverb that says that if we go alone, we can go fast, but if we go together, we go far. And if you want to go far, leverage the support system that Lifestyle Beautiful offers. So thank you again for attending. We are thrilled to have you. And Jim, thanks again. My hat off to you for some wonderful, wonderful, encouraging information that you shared with us today. I appreciate you incredibly.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thanks so much. Have a good night.